Good morning, market snipers. This is Jesse. It's about 9 a.m. Getting a couple seconds head start here. Hope everyone had a good weekend. And we're going to take a look at the charts. And we saw that Bitcoin is breaking down further, and we'll cover that. We'll also cover probably about 5 to 10 different assets. And if you're a subscriber, then you're able to comment if you want me to take a look at something. We'll try to spend 15 to 30 minutes of looking at the charts, the DXY, all that stuff. Probably like 5 to 10, like I said. And then if you want to let me know what crypto or stock it is you want me to take a look at, the name of it, and then also the symbol. There's so many that people look at. I may not have charted it before, so just kind of type all that in, and like I said, you can do that if you're a subscriber. So let's jump right in. Let's see, Bitcoin. Let's kind of zoom in here a little bit. So we're looking at the weekly chart, and the first thing we do is we always look at the higher time frame, right? So the higher time frame, kind of look at the recap as usual. It was bearish, bullish divergence, followed by the rally, right? And then there was the sell signals, the MACD, bearish crossovers, and then price pumped up higher, created bearish divergence. All things that we were considering and being aware of. Even though we hoped for higher prices, we wanted to stay in tune with what the chart's telling us, right? Because what happens is, we talk about blocking out the noise. So blocking out the noise, what does that even mean? I consider, the noise out there is, people extremely set to one narrative, whether that's extremely bullish or extremely bearish, because we're swing traders or day traders or scalpers or longer term position traders, like an investor on the weekly chart or the 2-week chart or the monthly chart, whatever you decide to be. You won't be able to maximize profits if you stay in your biased on one direction. So if you're here for the tech, or you're here to never try to realize profits, then this channel probably isn't for you. But if you are, and you want to have a potential to buy the bottom, or a higher probability reversal from the bottom, or you want to realize gains from taking profit towards the top. Originally our goal was the top minus 10 to 13% on Bitcoin on the bull run, and we were at about 12%, right? And then the bottom, we're getting more and more dialed in. So the goal was like 5 to 8%, and I believe bought the bottom minus that 5 to 8% area. So continuing to try to get better, and again, not trying to capture 100% of the move, because that requires some guessing, and the more you guess, the more you're going to lose, right? So I'm looking for higher probability reversals, and of those moves, looking to try to capture 80 to 90% of that move to the best of our ability. So getting back into it, I was putting out Bitcoin videos on the weekly chart as well, based on the weekly chart. Hey, there was bearish divergence, and there was one of the videos mapped out like 7 different major reasons why Bitcoin looked like it was rolling over on the weekly chart before it actually had this sell signal on the weekly chart back in August, right? So that's like the confirmation of the trend changing. And even though it could be short term, the weekly chart moves slower, right? So it moves slower than daily chart. So it usually doesn't happen overnight. Of course, it could always happen overnight and switch back and forth. But usually, and we're playing the percentages, when we're playing the probabilities, it doesn't just flip back, like say a lower time frame does. So let's see if there's any private chat comments. Okay, so the weekly chart, we saw that there was like a pending bearish MACD crossover. There was on our bot alert system for Bitcoin, there was a potential sell. There was the RSI sell signal, I took it off here, but there was a, here, I can put that back on, you know, so all these alerts, sometimes I turn some of the alerts off just because the chart gets overwhelming for, social media purposes, but I usually have them turned on. Let's see, RSI, buy, sell. Oh, I missed it. Wow. So we had the sell signal back here on in May. So the RSI sell there. Again, the potential sell in the bot alert system, and all of that. So that's great. That's the recap of it. And there's longer videos, 7 to 10 minute Bitcoin videos going back in detail, and those are still relevant today. So if you wanted to dive back in deeper, I've already done those videos, so you can go back and take a look at it. You can't rehash, every single asset over and over again because, I've already done it, and it's still playing out that way. So after breaking down, right? Actually, I'll probably just draw it out from here. But after breaking down, it's just continued to move sideways and or downward. There was that wick, so on a higher time frame, there was a retracement where I had, 4 targets mapped out to the upside, and 2 of those targets were hit to the upside, and the third one was very close. So it doesn't mean that the third and the fourth can't also be hit again to the upside as a retracement prior to coming back down to these levels. So usually it doesn't go in a straight line. So we just got to kind of keep an eye on it, what it's going to be doing. But again, as of right now, it's still early in the week because it's day one of the week, right? So it could create this wick here, and still build out and come back up similar to silver and gold, and even hit that third and fourth target and then come back down. So that's still the one possibility, even though it's not looking at it at the moment. That is still a possibility. But as of right now, it's still, you can see that there's still an overall downward trend, right? So the weekly RSI is still trending downward, and you don't want to like battle that. You want to trade with the trend. So at this moment, being that it's extremely early in the week, and it looked pretty bullish back here, and then finished with a close back down here. So it could start off looking bearish, and the end of this week it could close back up here into those shorter term targets. So still taking a look at it from the weekly standpoint and the daily standpoint. So let's take a look at the daily. So the daily is looking bearish. And again, the daily close is not over yet. It was all the way down to, just below $25,000. And that last Bitcoin video, it's still a possibility that I was covering that this could end up being bullish divergence, and there could be continued bullish divergence. So meaning that prices continue to move downward and sideways while RSI is moving, slightly upward and sideways, right? So creating that divergence, making it to where you could see like this lower high get put in and then come back down these lower targets. So still seeing the same from the last update, and that's basically where we're at, and we're just watching it from there. So if you're in a short position, you're probably still holding it. And if you're looking for a buy the dip scenario, you're probably still waiting, right? So that's kind of where it's at right now, because there hasn't been any buy signal in the daily chart since that one candle, right? So you have this last sell signal back here at 27,200. It's just continuing to go down. There's been no buy signal on the weekly chart. The last sell signal was back here at like 26,000. And even though there's wicks up, it's continuing to trend downward. So, it's buy the right dip, as we always talk about. So, what does that mean? What is buy the right dip? it's waiting for a higher probability reversal. So whatever that turns out to be, could be something like that, right? So possibly even, just for purpose of this, if this was like a lower high, wherever that lower high is put in at, could be something like that, and just kind of rolls out, and then you'll see a lot of people move their trend lines and stuff like that, right? So kind of anticipating all that, where it's starting to look really bearish, and then but on the lower time frames there's bullish divergence developing, and then all of a sudden it reverses back around, traps some more longs into the position, and creates that lower high, and then comes down for a bigger move to the downside, and it continues to catch people offsides. So on the wrong side of things, offsides. Was watching a lot of football over the weekend. Watched the Minnesota Vikings lose. Seemed like we had that game, even though we made a lot of mistakes. This is not a football channel, but at the same time, I'm a Vikings fan, and it's continued pain, right? So, 40 plus years based off of my dad brainwashing me, making me become a Vikings fan since birth, right? So, nothing but heartbreak. Never been to a Super Bowl in my lifetime. So, anyways, moving on. The Nasdaq. What's the Nasdaq doing? Very similar to what we're talking about. No real new developments since the last live update. Basically everything that kind of still the same of what we were talking about before, where you know this was the peak in 2021, and you can go back to that last live stream that was recorded and take a look at what I was talking about. This could be that lower high, right? And then it looks like it's potentially building out another lower high, and then we'll see if it comes down. We do have that RSI sell signal here, back on in August, right, on this weekly chart, and had this bearish divergence that was before it. So you got bearish divergence on the weekly chart, followed by an RSI sell signal. Now there was 1, 2, 3 weeks of being straight down, and then now it's getting that bounce, but it doesn't look like it's like bouncing with authority to where, and it could, but it doesn't look like it that it's going to, take this you know this pivot here and close higher on the weekly basis, right? It just seems like it's kind of like that bounce could be in, and it could start rolling back over. Could take some time to play out. Could take weeks, right? It's a weekly chart, so it could take weeks or months. And so what you can do is kind of draw out this trend line, right? And that's still the overall trend. So we're seeing early signs, with bearish divergence and RSI sell signal, but it's still, the overall trend is upward. So a higher probability is going to be below it. But we're always going to be on like a lower time frame, like the daily chart and stuff, and then kind of map it out like that. So you can kind of see where it's coming to, you know, coming to the end of the road, at least for a larger correction. And a lot of times that we talked about was that Bitcoin, will lead the way, just like it led the way in 2021. Bitcoin was rolling over, and so was the Russell 2000 actually. And so we could take a look at the Russell 2000, which has still remained more bearish than, say, like the Nasdaq. So we then the Russell 2000 and Bitcoin both rolled over within the same week ahead of the Nasdaq. So we're always looking for that potential leading indicator. We can look at gold, where it looked like it was building out that lower high, possibly ahead of Bitcoin, but on the weekly chart, but behind silver, right? So it's kind of a wait and see that this could kind of roll over and then see this lower drop. So if it does roll over, as it's starting to look like more and more, right? Even so, like after the bearish divergence and price breaking down and RSI breaking down back here and having an RSI sell signal in the weekly chart, that was already like early on, right? Now it's come back down, hit a target, bounce back up, and then we're going to see if it's going to start rolling back over. If it does that and it looks similar to Bitcoin, well, Bitcoin is back below the 200-week moving average. So this is the 200-week moving average here at 12,642. So if you look at Bitcoin, it bounced above it, right, in that rally, and then it closed back below it. So it's on a longer term, it's bearish below the 200-week moving average. So, we talked about this a lot back in the bear market that Bitcoin was created after the last market crash of 2008. And Bitcoin has never really experienced like a longer term bear market from like the NASDAQ and the SP 500 and stuff like that, right? From the traditional markets, Bitcoin has never really experienced like a longer term correction. So, we've talked about this and I've talked about it on Twitter Spaces, for the last couple of years. You know, and my thought was, if you look back at like the March 2020 crash, Bitcoin dropped 65% on that crash. And so it's still probably going to be like more bearish than the actual traditional markets and not break correlation. That would be my main thesis, because my main thoughts, because it's already proven that in the past. So it's going to continue to be the same and not break correlation to the overall markets. Matt Thompson, hi Jesse and everybody. What's up, Matt? Good morning. Hope you had a good weekend. So, I don't think it's going to break correlation. I know there's a lot of hopeful ultra bulls and perma bulls out there, but it's still, in my mind, it's still like a tech stock almost, right? So, and a lot of the patterns are very similar for trading, and I think it became more so once like Bitcoin futures was created in 2017. So I don't think it's going to break correlation, and I think once these ETFs are created and rolled out, I know there's like trust and everything like that as well, but like I think once the ETFs are created, I think it's going to become more correlated with the markets, not less. So I think a lot of people are missing that, and it's going to be great from a trading standpoint. But if you're just a buy and hold for, you just buy it and hope that it makes you rich one day, and that's it. I think a lot of people are going to be taken off guard off of that, and I wish we could just buy one Bitcoin and then become millionaires, but I don't think that's reality. I think once the futures were created and now the ETFs, I think it's become more of a trading asset, and I appreciate that too as a swing trader. So unfortunately, right? So couldn't let us become rich off of one Bitcoin, but maybe in the next bull run, it'll make people a lot more money if they end up taking profits this time. But what happens is, the prices get up there and then nobody wants to take profits, because then people start talking about the prices going higher and higher and higher. So we'll continue to look at it from a trading standpoint. But again, Bitcoin is back below the 200-week moving average. So not to get too sidetracked, will the NASDAQ, if it continues to look like it's rolling over slowly on this weekly chart, will it also come back and retest the 200-week moving average and price go below it? This is so much speculation, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue to speculate. I probably need more water. It's only 18 minutes in. So the DXY is still bullish. It had that breakout and on the weekly chart, and it's still bullish, and the trending dots are trending upward, and they're flipped back green, and doesn't mean that price can't come back to those trending dots in a bigger move up. And for the record, as of this moment, I don't think it's going to be a large move up like this. Me personally, I think it's probably going to come up and hit some more retracement targets, and put in that lower high, and then we'll see if it comes back down to these lower areas. But you know, in this long bull move from like June 2021 all the way to the peak up in September 2022, that big run, you can see where the trending dots were in this long upward trend and green the whole entire time. And price would come back to those trending dots and then bounce off of it, come back very closely, bounce, and continue upward, right? As it became more and more bullish. So this trend line, price could close back down below it or wick down below it, retest, bounce back up, and keep those trending dots moving upward like that. So it's possible. So if you kind of like even drew it out like that, you can kind of see where, it could come back down like this, kind of retest it, and then continue up where it hits those upper other retracements, because it's already hit one or two targets so far. Hits that third and fourth target, does something like that, and then rolls back over, right? And then there's that longer term target down here that we had mapped out way back here in October 2020. So that could be the game plan. It's too early to say, but as of right now, it's still bullish on the weekly chart, and it had that weekly buy signal back here. And price was getting extended from the trending dot, so it could come back down before hitting those targets. So, but it's still upward trend. Let's look at the daily chart. Maybe it kind of lines up with that. Yeah, so you got, the trending dots here. You have the 200, I think that's the 200-day moving average, because I have it mapped out with the chart. So price could just come back, retest here, and then continue on this bullish run as well. So you've got this, if you're looking on the lower time frame, like the daily chart, this trend line still lines up with those trending dots. So it could be more of like a retracement to here, kind of find support, and bounce up to the and head towards those upper targets. So let's look at the VIX on the daily chart. I don't think there's too many developments on the weekly chart. Still trending downward. 200-day moving average is trending downward. And if you get to the weekly, same, right? So there's no real spike on the VIX right now, and it's still, could take some time to kind of play out, and would be lined up with like the NASDAQ and stuff, where it takes weeks, if not, a month or so to kind of build it out and then see if there's a spike up, at least back to the 200-week moving average, and see what happens from there. So silver. Basically, we were talking about last week, this consolidation, right? And if you kind of draw this out, you can see where it could be in this consolidation for weeks, if not months, before there's a significant breakout. So it's not, crashing back below the 200-week moving average, and it's not breaking out to the upside either. It's just going in this consolidation. So as of right now, maybe it comes back up to like into the trending dots, comes back down, does something like this over and over again, and continues to consolidate and it contracts more and more, right? Contracts more and more, something like that, and then has that move out, right? So we'll see if that happens or not, but that's just seems to be like it's been in this consolidation since May, and could continue that way. So and then look for like a possible bigger move. Of course, it could be down to the downside as well. So we'll have it all mapped out ahead of time, but as of now, it just seems like it's going to be in this consolidation for a period of time, and be watching on the daily chart. Doesn't mean on the lower time frames, it's still not it's on lower time frames, still a wild asset to trade, especially on Forex, right? So was trading it, last week and posted on silver. It was on a very short time frame, within an hour. $4,100, locked in those profits. And then last night I was messing around for a couple of hours. I think football. I was already having a bad day on football, which is out of my control. My fantasy team lost. The Vikings lost. I don't like to lose. So, I put on a very short-term day trade on silver, on Forex, and, locked in like $550. I was watching football. I had the targets mapped out on the profit and a stop loss. And, probably could have, if I was watching it more closely, Andre Britz, yo, what's up, Andre? If I was watching more closely, probably would have, could have, should have, probably could have locked those that quick, couple hour, or I can't even remember the time I was trying to watch the Giants get spanked by Dallas 33-0. Pretty boring, awful game. Very dominated. Made me feel, very similar to last year when the Vikings got hammered by Dallas as well. Anyways, you forgot to check the BLX chart. Yeah, I know. They have a lot of requests, so there's only so much time in the day, and after like a 1 hour live stream, I gotta then refocus the energy and into some of the major projects that we have. Bearish divergence on the monthly. Yeah. So, anyways, might as well take a look at it. You brought it up again, so thanks for the reminder. We'll look at it today. But yeah, so long story short, we're making the short story long. Scalped it and or quick day trade for last night for $550, $560. I'd have to take a look, but probably could have been like 755. I was watching it more closely, watching the spike up. So can still trade this on the lower time frames, even though it's going through this consolidation, because they're fast moves. So I would make sure that you have a lot of experience before doing stuff like that. So gold, how long does it take that to play out? Thanks. You can kind of see it on the chart, or you're probably talking about the bearish divergence on the monthly. It's a monthly chart, so it could take months, if not a long time to play out. So there was bearish divergence on Bitcoin 2021, so on the monthly chart. So it takes months to play out, right? You're on a monthly chart, so it takes time to play out. But we'll take a look at it. Gold, has a lot of similar thoughts and to silver, right? So, again, it's kind of like watching it go like this, and you've got this potential consolidation. This is the daily chart. Let's look at the weekly chart. That's how I had it drawn on silver, I believe. Let's see. And then if you kind of draw it out like this, so it's kind of consolidating in here. And then, I'm not a huge pattern guy. I'll have patterns for as ideas, similar to fractals, and even mess around with just as ideas overall, but it doesn't really impact my trading over that. So as it's kind of consolidating here, could it break down from there and then retest the 200-week moving average, similar to Bitcoin, right? And then Bitcoin is back below it. We'll see. It still had that RSI sell signal way back here in May, and it's still continuing to slowly trend downward. You've got the trending dots slowly kind of going sideways and downward, and are still red on the weekly chart, right? So if you look at it, just the eyeball test from this pivot to this pivot, you're probably looking at, like, I could draw the targets, and then probably one of the main targets is probably going to be here, very close to the 200-week moving average at about $1,800. And I could see where that could be a buying opportunity, right? So if you're not, shorting gold or shorting silver, looking at it from like more of a buy the right dip scenario, you could probably see where, some more buyers will come in around this area because, you know, big time buyers aren't going to come in when price is overbought, right? They're going to be looking for like a better value, right? So this would be a pretty good one. Obviously, it could go lower and be, depending if the DXY is, continue to be bullish and making highs or just trending upwards still, right? Then you could see that gold and Bitcoin and stuff could continue to drop down lower. SP 500 looks very similar to NASDAQ, so no need to spend too much time on it. But again, the only difference I see here is that there wasn't that bearish divergence on the SP 500 for the weekly chart, but there was an RSI sell signal, and it looks like it could be, losing steam, losing momentum, losing that relative strength, and then kind of rolls over and continues down, and then we'll find out where it finds support from there. NVIDIA, I'm going to get through these and then we'll kind of jump back to look at your bearish divergence on the monthly chart, Andre. Appreciate your work. Thank you. So mapped this out last week and have been talking about it. Been talking about the bearish divergence on the daily chart. Drew in this trend line and drew out this yellow brush idea that price will come back down the trend line before it did. And now we're going to see, is it going to just break straight down through it, come back and retest that trend line? So the idea is going to be the same, whether it's, lower or higher. That's just kind of what I see, where it could build out like that right shoulder, right? So if we look at the daily chart, and again, even the weekly chart has like that bearish divergence and then have that RSI sell signal. And this looks like, continued bearish divergence on the weekly chart because you have a lower RSI peak and you have a higher price peak here. So if you were to, one little trick here, if you don't have like our sharpshooter RSI, what I used to do a lot when I was like not as confident in divergence is I would switch this to a line chart so you can more clearly see that this is divergence. You got a peak, you got another price peak that's higher, you've got RSI peak here, and then another lower RSI peak here. That's longer term bearish divergence. And it goes back all the way to, this area here. So you've got bearish divergence, you've got this 20% gap. I think it's just a matter of time where price comes back down and retests here, right? It's really far. It's really extended from the 200-week moving average. As we were talking about last week on, the whole rubber band idea, where price gets extended one way or the other and then comes back to its middle, right? It's mean. Middle, mean, same thing. Similar. So let's get back on the candles. So at the end of last week, kind of drawing it out that, maybe price comes like this and then builds out, kind of lets the trending dots catch up and then start rolling back over. But doesn't mean it can't like break back down first, kind of like this, and then retrace back up and retest this trend line before coming back down. So all keeping in mind that, I know there's a lot of bullish NVIDIA people out there because that's what we've been seeing only on YouTube and, what we've been seeing on, Twitter a lot and stuff, AI, artificial intelligence, and, what's powering that, NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA is helping with all of that. And so, but at some point, if you're just looking at the charts and you're being unbiased, you've got bearish divergence. We talked about on the weekly chart, but you've got it on the daily chart. And then again, continued bearish divergence, right? So another reminder that, bearish divergence can last or bullish divergence can last for a lot longer than most people think. But eventually price is going to catch up, right? So you're seeing that it's rolling over on the weekly chart, but there's no sell signal. But it's rolling over on the daily chart, and then there was a sell signal on Friday, right? So it could drop back down, wherever this is, could have, could find support, above it, and then build out that lower high, right? So you got to look, builds out that lower high, wherever that is, right? It could be that lower high could come all the way back up, right? Build out that lower high and then drops down. But it could be, you know, below it as well. So drawing this out on Friday, it could drop back down similar to, what it did back in August, come back, retest it, maybe even trap some more bulls back up. But the key is that lower high. Once that lower high is in, then that is your higher probability that, the reversal is in and uh, lower prices are coming. So it's interesting to see that this 200-day moving average is coming up very close to the gap, and it is a significant gap. It's over 20% gap. So the market makers, the market is going to pay attention to that, and they'll want to fill it at some point, right? So may not happen immediately, may not happen overnight, but eventually, it could take some time to play out, especially looking at the weekly chart. Could take some time to play out, but eventually that gap is going to get filled. So if you love NVIDIA and you're, a diehard NVIDIA, to me, that would be like a potential buy the dip scenario, right? It doesn't mean price can't go lower, but looking at it, there's probably going to be a lot of algorithms or investors or whatever, where if price comes back, you see like a big bounce off of it, because that's like a key area that probably a lot of people are looking at, right? Doc, his arguments are also really good, like yours. The outcome is the opposite to yours. Maybe in your next call would be cool. I'm not really sure who you're referring to. Um, his arguments are also really good, like yours. I don't know. Maybe you can elaborate, Doc. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. But talk about in the next call as well. 9:36 a.m. So I'm gonna try to wrap up some more, and then we'll look back at. There's a couple more I want to show, just to kind of keep talking about how we, pay attention to the chart in front of us that we're trading first and foremost, but with an awareness of what all these other charts are doing. Apple, again, after we're talking about the breakdown from bearish divergence, the reversal, continued bearish divergence, and then that sell signal, and then the gap down, right? After hitting multiple targets, we drew out that scenario where watch out for that, there's that sell the rip type of scenario, create that lower high, up here near where it could, possibly fill that gap. And that's exactly what it did, right? And then drop back down. And then we'll see if it comes down and hits those lower targets that we had on the charts, way back here. So, you get the 200-day moving average moving up there. Price could, pretty much, that's not a huge gap, but price could, kind of play around here, build out, let the trending dots kind of catch up, because it was such a big move, and then roll back over like that. So, it's possible that it just comes straight down, but it seems more probable that, price would kind of build out like a lower high here, similar to this, and then roll back over to hit those lower targets. So that's Apple. If you look at it, let's take a look at the weekly chart. Looks like especially on RSI, it does look like that lower high was put in, and it's still trending downward, right? So, again, it could kind of build out like, let everything kind of catch up for like maybe a couple days or weeks or whatever it takes, and then see if it rolls back down, or if, finds support and bounces from there. And then it could take some time to play out, but had this great rally, right? This big move, a drop down, and then it looks like a lower high was put in, And now we're going to see if it's going to come back down and hit those lower targets. So you do have the 200-week moving average all the way down like 135. So something to be aware of. And that could be, a possibility as well. So that's Apple. If we look at Path, this is one of those charts where you're talking about like trade the chart in front of you, because you got these longer term targets that could be potentially hit on Path. It flipped bullish on the weekly chart, and it's continuing to be bullish on the weekly chart. RSI is up to 60 on the weekly RSI, right? If you look on the daily chart, Path is ultra bullish on the daily chart. So it's ultra bullish on the daily and it's bullish on the weekly chart. So, just because the overall markets look like they could potentially be rolling over, they all move at different times. And so that's why I keep showing Path, is that, they had this buy signal back here in August. And just because the markets might have had some big moves to the downside, it did start, closing back above the trending dots. Trending dots are moving upward, broke out of this trend line here with the close, and now it's ultra bullish on the weekly chart. So as of right now, it doesn't mean it can't reverse, but as of right now, it looks to be trending up towards this longer term target. So we'll see what happens, especially with the weekly chart. It's coming back up into here, and there was a weekly close here. So if you're a big like horizontal, you know, trend line person, then that was a big deal for you, right? So if you had this horizontal weekly, right here at $18, and then you had a weekly close above it, that's a big deal for a lot of horizontal type of traders, right? So that was a breakout, and from a horizontal standpoint, and then you have, another horizontal weekly, call it right here at $22. So that could be some more resistance there if you're into the horizontal, or 21, 29, right? So that's kind of watching on Path. And then also Tilray Brands, that was another chart that's looking, that's still bullish on the weekly chart, and it had like this V move and still continue up. So if you look at, you've got these like longer term, I was drawing out like the 200-week moving average there of potential path of it. And so you got like this bigger, longer term target box here. And then you have like these shorter term, based off of like the daily chart targets that were all being hit. So you had target 1, target 2, and then now target 3 has been hit twice. And it's continuing to move up. It's still bullish on the daily chart, and it's still bullish on the weekly chart. So these shorter term targets are being hit. It doesn't mean these longer term targets can get hit all at once. You can see kind of like this, targets get hit, price comes all the way back down, puts in a low, puts in a higher low, right? And then could come all the way back up and then hit these longer term targets. So had drawn this out, looks like a couple weeks ago, and the 200-week moving average could continue down towards here, and maybe that's where it retests. Doesn't mean, it was at 200-week moving average was at like $9. Now it's down to like $8.67. By the time, Tilray possibly retests it, could be at $5, right? So, could kind of go through like hitting these targets, creating that higher low, and then getting a good bounce up. And by that time, since the moving average could be a lot lower by that time. So that's pretty much it. BLX looks like it's the only one you guys want me to take a look at. If there's any other assets, just let me know. We still have about 17 minutes for this 1 hour, and then I'm going to jump on. Got a major project I believe is getting finished up early this week. So jumping on a call after that with the developers. So it's been a long time in the making. They're 4 months past due, right? So, but I don't want to just roll it out. I want to make sure like any little tiny bugs are fixed on version 1, the beta test version 1. And there's already, version 2, 3, and 4 is already mapped out, but it just takes time and I want to do things right. And a wise man once said in the Discord, one of my buddies, Tom, um, very successful guy, once you let the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't put it back in. So, words of wisdom from Tom. Shout out to Tom. And all right, so let's go to BLX. I believe I have it in the red list. BLX. Start with a fresh chart. Maybe you don't even have any drawings. Remove 9 drawings. So this is the weekly chart still. Let's look at the monthly chart. Bearish divergence. So the bearish divergence that what I was talking about was from here, this peak and this peak, right? So that was definitely a bearish divergence on the monthly chart. I'm not seeing bearish divergence here, right? Because if you're going just back from here to here, yes, that was bearish divergence on the monthly chart for BLX, Andre. So I'm not sure if this is what you're talking about. This would just be, potentially a lower high, right? So this would be like a lower high. You can see it more clearly on the RSI. And if you switch it to line, it's going to look very similar to RSI. And then, this, it's too early to say, but it could be just a lower high. So I wouldn't say that's bearish divergence. So I'm not sure what you're referring to. But, looking at it from an unbiased standpoint, there you can see that the indicator is picking up bearish divergence from November 2013 all the way to December 2017, right? Who knows if that's going to play out or not? I mean, that would suggest that Bitcoin would come back down to $1,000, right? So I don't think that is probable. I'm not even thinking that it's probable it hits 10,000 at this point, like, right? So it would have to come back down and, start closing daily, weekly, and monthly below this pivot point here. And until that happens, I'm not concerned with coming all the way back down. Now, if you look at the BLX and we're looking at this objectively, just like this peak is lower and this peak is lower, and that's bearish divergence. You also have bearish divergence here from here to here, right? So is that also bearish divergence? And then this was bearish divergence, and then this is a lower high. I mean, it's possible, right? So this could be bearish divergence. This could be bearish divergence. This was definitely a bearish divergence here and there. I'm not sure if that's going to play out. I have talked about this before, and in the Discord, this exact same thing. I talked about this more than a year and a half ago. Definitely a lot more in the Discord and stuff. But I did talk about that. It would be crazy if that played out. Um, I think it's less likely that this kind of plays out. But if you look at it from like, the NASDAQ.com bubble era, right? So when the NASDAQ, it came down and the RSI came all the way back down to like on a monthly chart, like down to the, the lower RSI levels. In the bear market, even back in here, we were talking about it's a potential that, when RSI is back up here, that we could see RSI come all the way back down because again, we were talking about Bitcoin has never experienced a longer term correction. So if the Nasdaq and if the markets go into like something similar to like 2008 or the dot-com bubble, how would Bitcoin react to that? Well, I don't think it's going to go to $100,000 while the NASDAQ is in a bear market or continuing to correct down, right? So we were talking about the correction for the NASDAQ 2021. There's a 40% correction. Then we were talking about a rally, and the rally did not make a new higher high on the NASDAQ, even though some of the stocks it did, like Apple and Nvidia. But there's most of the stocks are still bearish, right? So like even though there is, they call it the Magnificent Seven stocks, the Magnificent Seven pretty much held up the NASDAQ. So if the Magnificent Seven stocks, like Apple and stuff, were pushing NASDAQ higher, and then also, the trading algorithms for like NASDAQ futures and ETFs and all that stuff were help pushing it up. All people forget about all the other stocks that didn't really do much, right? So, and Bitcoin, had a 100% rally. We hoped for it in the bear market for a 100% rally. It was like 104, 105% rally. We hoped for higher prices for a higher rally. But at the end of the day, it could just be putting in a lower high. So looking at this, from a neutral standpoint and not getting too bullish or too bearish, right? If we were too bearish, we would have missed that rally. And if we're too bullish, we'd be missing that, there's a possibility that this longer term bearish divergence ends up playing out. So we don't know yet. What we do know is that there was bearish divergence here and here and here and here, and then there was a correction after that. So if this bearish divergence played out from here to here, then I would be looking at prices coming back down to that, $10,000, $11,000 area. I would think that would be a strong possibility that happens if this longer term bearish divergence happens to play out, right? So I'm more interested in like the shorter term of this monthly bearish divergence, but it's something to keep an eye on and not to be, so set in the ways, so that we can look at this from a neutral standpoint and spot it that, hey, RSI hasn't come back down and price hasn't come back down to reset this bearish divergence. So it may or may not happen. It's just more of an awareness. And of course, we're going to be on the lower time frame swing trading this. But if you're looking at it from like RSI trendline 2, it's like you've got on a monthly standpoint from the BLX, and that's still at 25,800. So what we want to do is in real time, let's go back to Bitcoin in real time, right? You can't really see it on Binance because the history doesn't go back that far. That's why the BLX is good. So good job in pointing that out. But if you're drawing this out from like a monthly standpoint, right, the trend lines, then price is right on that trend line, if not below it. So if you start closing back below it from this point to this point drawn out. And one other thing to think about is that we were talking about a potential bullish MACD crossover on the daily, I'm sorry, on the monthly chart, and it never happened. The MACD never had a bullish crossover on the monthly, like there was a bearish MACD crossover on the monthly back in February, where price continued to pump up. So if we look at, let's see, inputs show MACD indicators on the monthly chart. Let's see, pending bearish MACD crossover. Maybe there was, okay, I take that back. There was, that's why we'll leave it up to the indicators to tell us. There was a MACD bull crossover, right? And now we have a MACD bearish crossover pending. And it's still early in the month. So it's too early to say that there's going to be a bearish MACD crossover. But that wouldn't be good for the bulls because this typically doesn't, bounce back so quickly on MACD. And so that is something to pay attention to. But again, like if we go back to like when there was a bearish MACD crossover back here in January, and we're calling that out. There was a bounce, there was a rally for a couple months before prices went down lower. So I know I was calling this out as the MACD bear crossover, but on lower time frame, saying that we could get a retracement and a bounce. And on this bounce and retracement, I think everyone can recall that many traders, investors were still bullish on Bitcoin and still calling for higher numbers and stuff like that. So just take that for what it is. They're not looking at what we're looking at, and they get caught up in their own bias, right? So we're going to just look at it objectively. And so that is something that is on the radar. Andre, just kind of go back to what you were talking about. I had talked about that potential of the long-term bearish divergence, even in the Discord and most likely back on Twitter and the newsletter and stuff like that, going back a year and a half, 2 years, right? So probably that long time ago. So it is on the radar. So thanks for bringing it up. Good thing to cover. Shooter, by the way. Hi, Jesse. What's up? Shooter, by the way. John. Hey, Jesse. Sorry about the Vikings game. Can you cover Tesla's breakout? John, I know. Well, it's being a Vikings fan. It's been 40 plus years of heartbreak. We've never made it to the Super Bowl. Talked about that early on in this live stream. Covered Tesla's breakout. Yeah, we talked about it. Did that 25-minute video on Tesla. I know you requested Tesla. So don't want to spend too much, but we do have like 4 minutes remaining. I want to keep that to an hour because I have an appointment with developers to make sure they finish up my first project. Not my first project, version 1 of the project. Want that thing to get wrapped up here today, if I could, or early this week. Well, let's see, Tesla. There it is. It gapped up today, right? On the daily chart. Smiley face wink. I don't know if you're a Packers fan and you're making fun of me. That'd be harsh, Shooter, by the way. So there is a breakout, right, on Tesla daily chart, and there was a buy signal back here on August, and so it could just be a retracement and a breakout to the upside. I'm not personally in Tesla, but this was a retracement to a key area, and so see if price is going to come all the way. I can see price coming back all the way up here and filling that gap. Let me turn off these. I might slightly go over, but we got 3 minutes here. Show the MACD indicators. Let's turn that off. Just kind of clean up the chart for a second. Right. So it was kind of, came down, and going back to that 25-minute video, we're talking about hitting key target area, coming back up. Also the gap, right? There is a gap up here. So not all gaps get filled, but they work great as targets. So looking at this, how big is that gap, right? How important is it to the markets to come up and fill this gap? It's a 3% gap. So it's not like it's a 20% massive gap, but it is a 3% gap. And so you could see, price coming all the way back up into filling this gap and then potentially rolling over, right? So if that's what you're watching, I don't know if you're in a long position already, John, or you were looking to buy the dip. Well, you had to be in the move already because then they gapped up. And so at this point, you wouldn't want to be chasing it, or me personally, I wouldn't want to be chasing it. And, if you're looking at it, you're probably looking at it more like back here anyways. And that would have been more like if you're looking for a buy, you got that close above the trending dots followed by a buy signal. Me personally, I would have wanted them back in at about 240, 241. And then it's kind of the trending dots or everything's still kind of bullish. And so what you can kind of see is, if you played this breakout and it comes up like this, comes up like that, fills that gap, right? And then comes back down like that. And that would be a lower high still. So that would still be a lower high. And so that's the way you kind of be playing it if you're in a long position, and try to ride it as long as you can, right? So you got these trending dots starting to line up with the trend line as well. So as you can see, price could keep coming back and retesting it, kind of doing one of those things, right? Doesn't usually go in a straight line and then kind of roll over. So that's kind of what I see for Tesla if you're in a long position. I'm personally not in a long position, and I'm not in a short position either. Um, but it would get interesting as a short position if it did come all the way back up, fill this gap, and then kind of come all the way and start breaking down, and then you start seeing like the sell signals and stuff, and that's when it would get more interesting for me to take a short, because this is going to be, like I said, that high probability short when you're shorting that bounce. There's that big bounce, that rally, that sell the rip type of scenario, and then it rolls back over. So, but you'd have to look at, the weekly chart too for the overall direction, 10 a.m. So we'll probably wrap it up here. But a lot of the thoughts were on the 25-minute. Let's see. Let me get back to the cursor. It could just be coming back in, putting this lower high, right? And you get that bounce off of it, and then it just ends up rolling back over and coming down to these lower targets. So that's where it's at right now. And come back up, fill this gap, and then you kind of see it come back down, and then see if it rolls over from there and comes back to retest this lower target, as we talked about in the 25-minute video from Saturday. Yes, I was recording on Saturday for you all. That's how much I care about the market snipers out there. Thanks for all of your support. I appreciate you. Continue to like, share, comment, give me support on the Vikings. I know they're not doing well. And then we got the Eagles on a short week, 4 days later. Hopefully we give them a better game this year. Last year we got smoked in the second week, and it's not a good feeling. Hopefully we were competitive, and just feed Justin Jefferson. Just feed him. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to direct message me, reach out to me in the Discord, whatever it is, and comment on the live stream, and I'll try to get back to all the comments and stuff like that. So hope you have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right.